Hello, Apocalypse! Troy to the max extreme here. And Dinosaur Dale!
And Ghost Hunter Dave.
And we traverse the female-laden apocalypse as Imperius Rex.
I'm glad we got to this safe, hermetically sealed bunker.
Oh my god.
Just in time.
I was starting to leak.
Oh no.
We did it, America. We finally got there. We're talking about a Brian K. Vaughan book.
We did it.
Hot off the debut of the newly adapted television series, we're talking about the classic, the you've got to read this if you want to get into comics comic of Why the Last Man. So welcome back, gentlemen. We're finally here. We're talking about Why the Last Man. And as I said, this is something of a gateway comic. Something that you would recommend to someone that isn't really into comics.
Yeah.
Is saying like, hey, you should read this comic. This is what comics can be.
Yes.
This is what comics are now.
Yes.
So my question to you, this is a 20-year-old comic. This is a formative comic to myself and to both of you.
Yeah.
Does this comic hold up today? And what does it bring to the table?
I would say it holds up more so today. I think
Oh my!
this comic may be more relevant than ever, and the fact that it is finally getting its own due as an FX series, I think says a lot. I think
FX Hulu series.
FX on Hulu series. I think it says quite a bit about it, and I'm glad it finally got there.
Why is this comic so relevant and important?
So when this comic was created,
Take me back.
Okay.
2003, I believe.
Actually, September 2002.
Fuck you. It's 2003.
Regardless of when the genesis of this was created, Brian K. Vaughan strode to write a book about gender after a large breakup. And I think in the last 5-10 years, that has been a whole new horizon.
A melting pot.
Of things to delve into, which I don't think when this started, it could have even imagined where it could go.
Absolutely.
And I think now it's got so much more nuance and possibilities to get into, like, just other creative ideas that the show can use that the book had no idea it could get that far.
3 episodes of the show have come out at the time of recording this, so we'll touch on what we can of what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
So
That's right. So as 3 white males, middle-aged in fact, we are the perfect candidates to walk you through why gender and societal norms are so important in the context of Why the Last Man. Can you hand me one of them brews?
same.
Give me that Voodoo Ranger.
You bet. Neil, you get a Blue Moon.
All right. So one fun note that I stumbled on as I was preparing for this, over the last couple months, I have been reading Why the Last Man. I've been watching the Netflix adaptation of Sweet Tooth. I have finally been finishing the HBO series The Leftovers, and just recently have watched the 3 episodes of the adaptation of Why the Last Man, and I have had a fucking hell of a time keeping track of all these apocalyptic plagues that have burdened society, that anytime I'm watching one of these, I'm like, so wait, which one is this?
Is this where all the fellas are dead?
Is this the fellas? Is this the rapture? Is this the hybrids? Everything is just convalescing but we are living in a society where all of it is interchangeable at this point, and it's all fair game. Where I feel like this and all those other properties are more pertinent than ever right now when we're dealing with the shit world that we're all living in, and just how you can take that as a vehicle to tell a really interesting story. And that was written 20 years ago, prior to any of this, but it is just as relevant, if not immensely more relevant today than it was at that time. Let's jump into it.
Sure.
The comic. This took the world by storm.
When Brian K. Vaughan went to go write this, unbeknownst to them, I have this in my notes here, if I could.
We've all got notes here.
We've all got notes.
This has been 5 years coming.
But yeah, unbeknownst to even Brian K. Vaughan, he made a book where a majority of comic readers are male, and they are diving into this heralded book, and it's subverting all of their expectations going into it, because the reality of, like, you tell this to a bunch of guys, like, you're the last man on Earth, nothing but you and a bunch of chicks left. That immediately spurs, like, hell yeah, bro. And it is not like that even once. Well, maybe once in the book.
But not really.
But not really. And it is actually a hellscape for everyone, really. But for Yorick, who is the lead character in this, like, he finds quite a bit of hardships in this title.
Does he?
For being the last man.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, if there's anyone out there that doesn't know why The Last Man is about, let me spin it for you quick.
Spin us a yarn, Dave.
It follows the exploits of the last living males, plural. Yorick Brown, a very sarcastic escape artist. If I could quote my mother, he's so sarcastic. And his pet monkey, Ampersand, as he and a couple female companions scour the earth for a cure to the global androcide. That is the widespread annihilation of males.
Yes.
Had to look that up. And also reunite him with his girlfriend, Beth. And that's it.
That's the gist
That
of it.
60 issues from 2002 to 2008. That is the story.
Yeah.
So this is not an episode we're going to go play by play. We're going to go broad strokes.
Yeah.
Wide and broad strokes, because the storyline does not change a whole lot. They encounter different characters here and there. They go to a couple different locales. But that is the story until the end.
It is a lengthy piece of work. It's a maxi series.
Yeah.
But Pia's artwork, I think, in this is so hand in hand with whatever. I love
this
her
artwork
in
too.
this.
Agreed.
Like, to say it's simple is to oversimplify it, but you don't need to, like, get hung up and you're never like, what's going on? Like, it is just, it presents the story in every way that you need to see it to just move it right along.
It's clean, it's crisp, and it's detailed when it needs to be. It's great.
I would compare it to something like The Walking Dead. How, like, you can spend as much time on it as you need, but it never, like, slows you down.
So I actually reached out to Pia the other night.
I saw this.
And,
you're doing some extra credit.
Yeah, and I asked her, like, how much input did she have being co-creator for the book? Did you have a ton of notes by BKV? And she's like, actually, I kind of got to do whatever I wanted to do as co-creator, and Brian was super cool with that. That's why I love working with him. And we've heard that before with other artists that work with Brian K. Vaughan. It's a very collaborative effort where I'm writing the beats to this, but you can make it look kind of however you want.
Sounds kind of lazy.
I think it sounds...
Just kidding.
I think it
Marcos
sounds...
Martin said something similar about Private
Private
Eye.
Eye.
Yeah. They kind of asked, like, how they got to know each other, and Brian K. Vaughan instantly fell in love with a pinup she did of Yorick hanging upside down in a straitjacket. And it's kind of like one of the first introductions of him in this book. And he was he said he fell instantly in love with the artwork, and that's exactly the kind of look he was looking for, and like almost hired her on the spot. And then once they got to know each other, they had such like the same kind of like interest in television and other media that it was an instant synergy between the two. They realized like they were greater than the sum of their parts at about like trade 4, when it's like, well, he's an escape artist, right? So why isn't his nemesis like a dominatrix bondage person?
It's one
like,
of my favorite
it
volumes.
at that point it wrote itself, and they were like just firing on all cylinders.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Pia does not have like the bibliography that
Right.
Vaughan has.
Yeah.
She did a lot of kind of one-offs and almost like, I want to say like kind of political cartoon type strips.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. She has not done any like lengthy series to the extent of why.
Yeah.
I can
Other than
imagine.
why.
I can imagine how that length of book would really burn the shit out of you.
Yeah,
though, but, like,
I'm good.
yeah.
The premise of this story, top notch. You tell someone what it is, they have everything they need to know going in. Global pandemic, every male, anything on the planet is dead, and except for Yorick and his monkey, and go.
Yep.
Like I said, we're not going to get into the show too much, but there's so many ways you can take this too, which it might not follow all of the specific story beats, but it still feels like Why the Last Man.
Yeah.
I like right off the bat that they give like stats with now like pretty much the patriarchy is done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, the patriarchy pretty much unfortunately runs the world.
Yeah.
And like with everyone gone now, like it's a fucking bummer that the world is now in a pit that it needs to dig itself out of. But I feel like near, I didn't even say the end, I would say like near the middle, like the women in the book have taken over the whole world and are making it work. Like it's not, it is dystopian, but it's not like an apocalypse.
Right.
By like the middle of the story. Like the women are just now living in this world and like trying to get it back on its feet because bricklayers are no longer existent because 90% of them are men or whatever it is, you
it's
know?
like 95% of airline pilots are male.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that paints a horrible picture of, you think every male died instantaneously. How many planes just dropped out of the sky?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, there's no pilots.
Yeah.
Not because women can't, but just because there just
That's
aren't
the
women
way
pilots.
society has run its course.
Yeah.
Nuclear reactors, stuff like that. Like, they're all run by men. And it's like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
there are people that can do it, but they are not in that position. So, like, scramble.
Yeah.
How do we fix this?
Yeah.
I love how throughout this whole book has instances of that too. They always pepper in something. Like there's one where it's like, oh, we're the only submarine in the world that can float because Australia was the only country that allowed women to be on submarine crews. So like there's like that kind of stuff.
I do like in this scenario where like now everything with a Y chromosome is out. The first thing is like, we need to scramble, we need to fix things real quick, but very soon it becomes like, well, we need to fix it like this. No, we need to fix it like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then different factions are, it's like, everything turns political at some point where it needs to be done at a certain way, and you realize like, well, maybe it all is going to end up like, kind of like real life, no matter who is running it, you know?
Yeah. So as this story goes on, one of the main plot points is, why is Yorick and Ampersand, why have they survived?
Yes.
Every other male on the planet's dead except for those two.
Yeah.
Very unremarkable, everyday, average Joe
Yeah.
and his pet monkey.
Yeah.
What makes him so special, and what can he do to further the human race, basically?
Yeah.
And he's not alone on this mission. He has a supporting cast of some amazing characters. First up, Agent 355.
Yeah.
Yep.
She is an agent of the Culper Ring, which was a secret organization established by, was it Jefferson or Washington?
I know, it's one of
I
those
don't
like
remember.
Mason
Really?
Yeah,
Freemason
Freemason
type.
type shit.
Yeah.
Yes, and she's essentially Yorick's bodyguard, put into place by his own mother, who has become the president of the United States because she was in some like Secretary of Agriculture type of position, and when all of the men died, she just happened to be the next in line to like take over the reign of presidency. So Agent 355 is just this badass bodyguard, and she's just protecting Yorick's ass the whole way through.
Yeah.
Every time she whips out that baton, you know shit is gonna go down.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is, like, she reminds me of, like, Michonne from the... I hate to keep bringing up Walking Dead.
Yeah.
But, like, Michonne is definitely a reflection of 355, I think. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I should mention, throughout this whole thing, I would say it never gives the exact cause of the plague.
No.
It gives several.
Yeah.
And there's some that are more, like, validating than others.
Yeah.
One of which is removing a sacred amulet of Helene on an overseas mission in Jordan that cursed the world with a tragedy greater than the Trojan War.
Wow.
And that was something that Agent 355 was involved in.
Yeah.
So that's one of many.
They even talk about it in scientific ways, too.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, one of them...
The cloning?
The cloning thing, it's like, oh, well now, like, I've successfully cloned this...
Cloned.
A clone.
Yeah.
And that killed all the men, and they're even, like...
They're saying Mother Nature responded.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, the next step of evolution. You don't need men anymore. So Mother Nature just eradicated men.
And what's funny is about that is, like, there's scientific women in this community that are like, nothing like that would spread that fast, you idiot. Like that can't be the case. My favorite thing has to be Yorick's involvement around that, though, about how literally insignificant he is to the actual plot.
Oh, yeah.
At all. And
Yeah.
That's great to me. That the one last man in the book, it's really not about him at all.
No. But you mentioned like genetics and cloning, and that brings us to another pivotal character, Dr. Mann.
Yes.
Yep.
An Asian geneticist who tried to create the first human clone before her asshole father did so.
Yep.
And she gave birth to a clone of herself right at the moment that all the men died. So they think that might be a cause of it, like ground zero of the event.
Yep.
There's also Alter, who is an Israeli soldier obsessed with finding Yorick for basically like for political superiority of her nation. Her possible extinction cause is she believed the Culper ring created a bioweapon engineered to prevent male births, and it was dropped in China to cripple their economy. It backfired and killed all the living males, and I didn't realize this until I read this. Apparently this is the definitive cause that BKV subscribes to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I would like to think he would throw that up as like a weird red herring and not want to pinpoint, because like they do pinpoint why Ampersand and Yorick are alive.
Yes.
Like how they survived it. But like I don't want to say that like BKV would really show his hand on what he actually thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that it could be anything. There's also Beth, Yorick's fairy princess girlfriend that he's on a quest to find and rescue. She's stuck in Australia through the majority of this book. Mm-hmm. He also meets other Beths along the way.
Yes.
One of them, almost like a born-again Christian type of woman, taking care of a church. And he ends up having a strong connection with her. That is the one time that he fornicates with somebody.
Yes.
In a graveyard, nonetheless.
In a graveyard. And she ends up carrying his child, who is named Beth Jr. A lot of Beths in this.
I gotta say, that conversation amongst another character we'll be getting to, and Beth, was great, about how, like, why are only men named Junior or whatever? We can do that for... It's like, well, it's only girls left, so just Beth Junior it is.
Whatever you want.
We should also mention Hero, which is Yorick's sister, kind of a fuck-up. She gets wrapped up with the wrong crowd, a group of Amazons, a bunch of, like...
New Age Amazons.
Female liberation agents that think the patriarchy's dead, we're better off, and we want to just fuck up any remnants of that establishment.
Yeah. I actually really liked the whole New Age Amazon group, where it's like, Brian K. Vaughan even wrote them as, like, traditional Amazons where they cut off one of their breasts even,
So they can shoot their
so they
bows
could shoot
better.
their bow or
Yeah.
whatever. I really like that, the historical detail. I don't know why they really felt the need they needed to do that.
Seems painful and unnecessary to me.
But,
I
I
think
mean-
you could maybe shoot it without doing that, but
I mean, there's guns.
Strange. No,
Yeah.
that's true. Strange times, though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I would imagine if that shit were to happen, you'd get just a bunch of bonkers groups.
I mean, the world has gone crazy at this point, so you're
Yeah.
gonna have your nutsos.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a couple other supporting characters that also play a role. There's Agent 711, who you mentioned is the dominatrix deprogrammer,
Yeah.
who rids Yorick of his suicidal tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think this is an interesting point to talk about, because this whole thing, Yorick is like an overly sarcastic, hiding his guilt and shame with humor
Yeah.
type of guy. Where as you're reading it, you're like, oh yeah, this guy, he's funny. Like I identify with him. And then at some point you're like, okay, man, like get your shit together. You know, like
Yeah.
grow up a little. Like you keep like jumping headlong into very dangerous situations.
Yeah.
And you could potentially be the last male on Earth. Get your head out of your ass, dude. You can't be doing this.
Yeah. When Brian K. Vaughan went to go write this book, he wrote himself as Yorick, like as you would. He was in his early 20s.
Yeah.
This is what he was like. And when he went up to the head of Vertigo at the time, Karen Berger,
Yeah.
she's like, I really like this character. He's sarcastic and kind of a dick, and he's not really super likable. And the whole time Brian K. Vaughan is like, that's me.
Yeah.
But like as he wrote this book over several years, like obviously he matured.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much time actually kind of passes before like the time jump at the end in the book, but like Yorick also matures. Through the 60 issues that this spans, like his arc is amazing. It's not only his arc, it's like
Oh.
the
It's
main
everybody.
character. Like everybody grows. This is the one title that I would go back to actually have like an emotion. This is the first book, let me rephrase, that I actually had like an emotional response to the subject material.
Mhm.
When it got to the end, I went through this entire journey, and I was reading this like, I probably started when there was like probably 3 trades out.
Okay.
And then I read it as it came out in trade form, right?
Yeah.
So like I was with everyone as it was coming out, and I was a mess at the end of this. Like everybody's journey all came to a head, and there's one pivotal moment where there's a connection made and it is cut off. And I cried. Like this is the only book that's ever made me do this.
Mhm.
And I'm not alone in this either.
No, actually, I did as well.
Can we all talk about how we cried for a minute?
The first time I read through this,
We should get naked first.
yeah, there are 2 moments that, one that like both of them like made me like tear up and just start like almost crying. Well, did cry. Fuck it.
It's amazing.
It's just so
Like,
good.
It's so well done. Like I give it the highest marks you could give to any book.
On the topic of Agent 711, she brings up all these repressed memories of Yorick, where she's asking him, like, why aren't you fucking every woman you come across?
Yeah.
And I thought that whole trade was very interesting as they went into his past. And he had this moment, like, as a kid where he was, like, almost raped.
Tied to a tree or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
that, like, burned into my mind
Same.
as something like, that is, like, horrifying.
because
as
it's
a
never
kid.
it's never elaborated on. It's just a thing that happens and you're like, what the fuck?
And on
then
top
it
of that,
moves on.
The fact that you said, like, Brian K. Vaughan wrote this as himself, I feel like that is such a very specific occurrence.
Yeah.
I'm like, did something like that happen? That he's still, like, working out?
Yeah.
Because it feels so, like, personal. We're like, holy shit, like,
Yeah.
what was that?
Yes.
And on top of that specifically, I'm like,
Can we talk about that for the next 10 minutes?
yeah. I'm like, that seemed like so real to me.
It really did.
You
yeah.
could see it in the artwork too, where he's just like, he's losing it at the fact that like, I can't believe you're making me talk about this to you.
And it's almost like the grounds for him becoming an escape artist.
Yes. Yes.
It's just like this kind of tragic thing that happened in childhood, which was probably nothing more than like just a weird kid thing.
Yeah.
That just like wrecked him going forward and just ruined him like sexually.
Yeah.
And then like paired with like Catholic guilt and talking about like the inadequacy of being the only male left alive. It's like, go ahead, go repopulate the earth. And he's like, how?
Yeah, I got a shit fuck stack of a lot of things going on.
I've got shit
How am I
to do.
supposed to deal with this shit?
Yeah. He's just this guy that is in way over his head.
Yeah.
He's the last person that you would put in this situation. But, like, that's what we got.
Yeah.
And
You know,
honestly...
And we can all kind of identify with that.
I don't know, his character he made it further than a lot of people, I think, ever would. I think in that realistic scenario.
He made it to the end?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, holy shit, if that were to happen to me, I'd be like, I'm gonna jump in this wood chipper, fuck off.
Oh my god, no! I'm gonna hold my breath till I die.
I liked 7-Eleven a lot.
Yeah.
I wish she had more in it, but I enjoyed that, like, that trade that dealt with her and him coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
And we also get a glimpse of what makes him want to live. And we don't know it until the end. We also meet Kalina, this drug-dealing pirate captain, who I fell in love with. I really liked her. Who, they have all the same interests. They get along famously. And
Fellow monkey enthusiast.
Yes. But at one point she realizes an entire planet of women and the one guy gets to be the lead. And that feels like the encapsulation of the entire book right there. It's like, you have nothing but women to tell a story about, and we get the story about the one guy. I liked her a lot, and we also meet Rose, her first mate, who's an Australian spy, who ends up falling for Dr. Mann and joining them in their group. And then the last side character, not the last, but the last one I'm going to mention, the traveling theater troupe that we meet up with several times, which is like a meta commentary on all the events that are taking place throughout the book. They do plays, films, and eventually comics. And throughout the course of the story, Yorick crosses paths with them many times. And every time they reach the end of the story, he's always like, either your ending fucking sucks, or it ends and he's like, eh. Which is great. Throughout this entire book, there's a lot of times where they're talking about, like, there's no way that an ending can be satisfactory to something like this. And you could say, yeah, that's right, but they also acknowledge that going in, like, I mean, what do you expect? How could you possibly end this and satisfy everybody?
Yeah.
So let's get into the reason that Yorick is alive.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we discover that it is none other than his pet monkey's shit that is keeping him alive through this.
Yeah.
Because at some point, Ampersand has developed or was given an antibody to whatever caused the plague.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's been flinging his shit around Yorick, it somehow immunized him to this whole thing.
Right. And through some mix-up at an airport.
Yeah.
Now Yorick has the wrong fucking monkey at his house, flinging shit around him, unbeknownst to him, saving his life. Otherwise, he'd just have like a house full of monkey shit and he'd be dead as well.
Yeah.
I love that when that reveal is dropped, there's like this panel of Yorick saying like, what? No way! That's a fucking ripoff!
Yeah. And honestly, he carries that with him, like, throughout the book.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point where he realizes that, like, this could have been fucking anybody! God damn it!
Yeah.
Like, this sucks!
Yeah.
Like, I'm not special. I was, like, doused in monkey shit, and I just happen to be alive now.
This reminds me of the Simpsons episode where Homer gets a monkey.
Pray for Mojo.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many instances in my life where I just want to be able to post that GIF.
Mojo.
Yes.
Yeah. And maybe tomorrow when we're hungover from this episode,
Yeah.
we should just all post on Twitter, pray for Mojo.
Hashtag pray for Mojo.
So we're talking about that. What do you think
Yeah.
about how this whole thing wraps up then? If we jump ahead to the end,
Okay.
eventually Yorick is reunited with Beth. They
Yeah.
meet each other in Paris,
Yeah.
and he discovers that right before the plague hit, Beth was going to dump him.
Yeah.
But
Harsh.
she's now happy to see him, in love with him, and suddenly he's like, well, fuck. Like, you love me because I'm the only guy left.
Right.
And then he leaves and ends up realizing that he has true feelings for Agent 355, and she shares those feelings with Yorick.
Right.
And they have a moment together right before they don't.
Yes. So that, not the relationship with Beth so much, because like that's like his overarching plot. I need to find Beth or whatever.
It's a means to the end. To an end.
Yes. But what you get instead is a companionship and a real friendship. Like between York and 355, even though at some points they fucking hate each other.
Yeah.
But like, I love that. This is my favorite arc through the whole book, is like their blossoming relationship at the very end. And when it is finally realized that they both love each other and they know it, and it is cut off, that's where the wet work start. It's like, we went through years. It's
Yeah.
like a Ross and Rachel thing. And
Yeah.
they were never on a break. They were never a thing.
Yeah.
It's just like a whole thing where it's like, you almost didn't even expect it to happen. Because there's like always butting heads.
Yeah.
But when it does, you're like, yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
great. That's perfect.
No! And then it's done.
So 355, she completed her mission.
Yeah.
She traded in her gun for a very beautiful, elegant dress, and she's gonna like start a new life. And Yorick comes in. They have this moment together where she actually shares her real name, which she has not told him this entire time. And then immediately afterwards, she is shot in the head
Yeah.
by a sniper bullet from Alter, who we mentioned earlier. Has popped up occasionally throughout this, and she's got it out for Yorick. She wants to capture him.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just ruins you. It really
It
ruined me the
does.
first time through. And not only...
It's such an unsatisfying ending for her.
It
because
is!
she's finally happy. Like, she's someone who is always on top of
Yeah.
every scenario.
Super formidable.
And this is
Yeah.
something that just, like, caught her off guard, and she's done before she can even react to it.
Yeah.
Taken off the board.
From
and it's like, that is
unseen.
not her.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like the one time in the book she let her guard down.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to
Yeah,
mention...
she turned in her gun.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
She's-
And she's always the expert in getting the hand-to-hand thing, but it's something a mile away.
And then Alter charges in. Yorick composes himself, grabs that baton,
Oh,
and
yeah.
prepares to unleash everything that 355 told him. They battle, and he gets to the point where he could kill her, and he's like, no, I'm done. He's realized that she has a death wish of her own, kind of like he did. And she's been doing this because she just wants to fucking die too.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I'm done. 355 wanted peace. She wanted an end to this. And it's unsatisfying in the fact that you want retribution for what just happened to this character that you've grown an attachment for.
Yeah.
But, like, as Yorick's character development, you're like, my God,
Yeah.
he did it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did it.
The fact that, like, Alter's motivation, she was doing all this just for Yorick to fucking kill her.
Yeah.
You want it to happen so bad, but you feel so
She just...
bad and good for Yorick at the same time at the end for making the decisions he's made.
Yeah, I feel like she's one of many people that just don't know what to fucking do.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine it's like any soldier where, like, hey, we're pulling out of Iraq. we're pulling out of Afghanistan. He's like, I've just been fucking killing. Like, and I'm done? Like,
You want me to go
what
back
do
to
I
real
do?
life?
You know, it's like
Yeah.
it's like that. It's like, what do I do? So then after that harrowing issue, we get to the last issue where we jump ahead many years, and we're in the future, and it looks like the world is somewhat righting itself, repopulating. Dr. Mann got that cloning figured out.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of Yoriks wandering around.
Yeah.
And one of them goes to meet the original Blend.
Yeah.
Who's locked
Yeah.
up like in an insane asylum almost.
Yep.
Which harkens back to Yorick's own grandfather that he remembered having to visit as a kid in a
Like an old
retirement
folks home.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now like this young Yorick is meeting the original Yorick, and he just like he's so much wiser now, and he's trying to impart some wisdom to this young Yorick, while also thinking back to his whole life, and also giving us some insight into some other horrible, tragic moments between the penultimate issue and now. One of which, when Ampersand is on his last leg and he has to euthanize him, he feeds him like a poison pill, and he dies, and then he buries him next to a tree where he buried 355, and we see her name carved into it, and it's Peace.
Yeah.
That's actually where I welled up today finishing this book.
Wow.
Oh,
Is actually when
the Ampersand piece
Yeah.
gets me.
And not only
Oh.
that, and I think it hit me a little bit harder because I just recently had to put my dog down, and like it just hit all like that same level where it's like, oh my god, he's been just like this companion with him like his whole life,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just like now this is the time to go, buddy.
Which is even worse because he feeds him the pill, and like the Ampersand like starts to foam and choke, and he's like, they said it wouldn't hurt you, and it's like, fuck, like that's like a real thing, you know. It's like in a movie you think like they take it and they just drift off. It's like real life where it's like, oh, it's not like the movies.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't want to read about that because that's what we really have to do.
Yeah.
And then eventually, by the end of it, the original Yorick does some sleight of hand and escapes. He gets out an open window and he's free into the world. And like they're all looking, they're like, did he jump off to kill himself? And they're like, no, he's gone. In the last image, after seeing a couple snapshots of a world fully populated by women, we see the straitjacket blowing in the breeze in the form of a Y.
Yeah.
And that's the final page.
Yeah.
And
He escaped.
yes, he
Yeah.
escaped. Amazing ending.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember when I first read this, I didn't know how to take it. I was like,
I was initially on my first read. I
don't know if I like this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure if I like jumps in time. They don't always work. I think a jump in time near the end is a gamble because like you're breaking what you've just set up and you're foregoing continuity, and like anything could happen in this jumble of time that you don't talk about.
Yeah.
And you're just like wrapping it up near the end. In my first read, I don't think I was for it. Like I don't think it lived up to what happened right prior to this. But in hindsight, I think it works. But I still think what came before it is like the penultimate. Like it's great.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the whole story of like repopulating the Earth is concluded in the final issue.
Yeah.
But the only thing you really care about is wrapped up in the penultimate issue.
Yes.
Where it's like it's Yorick and 355.
Yeah.
And with them done, it's like I don't really care. You know,
Yeah.
like maybe the Earth gets back, maybe it doesn't. Like I'm only really concerned about these guys.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's where, in this reread, that the jump in time works. All your big beats are wrapped up, and it's just like, now it's all status quo up until this very point. What I like about this last thing is that when Yorick's talking to young, like clone Yorick, it comes back to multiple points younger in his life.
Yeah.
Where he either, it's the point where he buries ampersand,
Yep.
tries to go see Dr. Mann for the last time, but it finds out she didn't make
dead.
it either.
Yep.
Yeah.
So she meets
All of her clones.
Oliver, like the
Children
pirate with the
and
eye patch,
Rose.
Rose,
Yep.
who's watching after all of the adult now Dr. Men, as
Yeah.
he calls him, which
Yeah.
is very funny.
I
So-
actually really, really like Dr. Mann in this. I don't know if
So
I did as
good.
much in the first read, but like on this one, she was one of my favorite characters.
I know exactly why I think. It's because the first read through, this is just for me, but like, you really are on Yorick's side. You're an early 20s smart ass who thinks they know all the world. And you don't want somebody telling you what to do who wants to do to play by the rules to get to the place you want to be. Now that we're all in our 30s, we're like, all of us are Dr. Man. I fucking hate Yorick right now.
Yorick, can I just get some fucking blood in your head?
yeah. But the last
shit.
issue I think is awesome.
Is there anything on this that you feel may not have aged well?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Let's refresh it. It was written in 2003.
It came out when Friends came out.
It came out with So yeah. I would say there is language in it that's probably not gonna fly as much today as it would.
This book, I feel, was a very progressive book of the time.
Yeah.
And since this was published, I feel like the times have gotten more progressive. And as a result of that, we finally got an adaptation of this.
Yeah.
Something that was gestating for years.
I actually have excessive notes on like the comings and goings of like how it was going to be adapted off the
It was
page.
going to be movies, it was going to be shows.
It was going to be adapted as early as
gonna
the
be a
comic ending.
Yeah.
Like, it was going to start filming the year the book ended.
I heard Shia LaBeouf was going to be involved at some point.
Shia LaBeouf was going to be involved at some point, but he backed out because he thought that Yorick was too similar to his character in Transformers. But yeah, since like 2007, it's been in some film rights at New Line Cinema, and it went on and on. We changed directors, it changed hands producers or whatever, and then eventually in 2014, they're like, all right, we're gonna get started doing a movie or a trilogy, and then Brian K. Vaughan's like, actually the rights revert to me and Pia now because you took too long.
Sorry.
And it was right after like a certain like director got like christened to do the movie. Like, actually the rights belong to me now. Sorry, New Line Cinema, I'm gonna take this and go. And then it eventually landed years later at FX.
Oh my
And
God.
that was a slow burn to get anything going there. But when I watched this interview at New York Comic Con 2019, they mentioned like fall 2020. You're gonna see Why the Last Man, and I'm just like, oh, 2020 is a bad year to like say anything's gonna happen. Regardless, it is coming and it is out right now.
That's right. Any of you guys watch it? First 3 episodes are out. What do you think?
I have not gotten to it yet.
Well, I mean, I've watched it, and I'm not just going to talk at length on this. So, do I need to get?
I think you need to pull in a ringer.
Do I need to?
We're getting nothing from
Do you want me to? Do you want me to call the Imperius Rex business manager?
Wait.
He watched it with me.
Is it business time?
Do
You
me
want
to-
wait.
Hold on.
You want to get the business manager down here.
Let me get the business manager down here. Hello, Imperius Rex business manager.
Hello.
Wow! Hey, you respond very quickly.
Oh,
How's the hand?
Oh my God! Thanks for coming down.
You're welcome.
All right, so we're just talking about Why the Last Man.
I watched it.
You did. What'd you think?
I thought they did a very good job of, from what I remember, translating the comic, but also updating it
Yep.
and making it relevant to today's times. I don't know if you got notes and we need to jump around in certain ways.
Got a couple notes. Troy's got a notebook over there.
Book over here.
He's got it's separated into
Three
different
subjects.
Three
Three
subjects.
Okay.
Yeah, movie, TV, and film.
God bless.
But we were talking about the show, and the comic was obviously from a very male perspective because it was written by a male. But the show takes a very female-centric viewpoint, and I mean, Yorick is in it, but it's not all from his perspective, and I think that does the story very well.
How does the show, not having watched it yet, take on maybe like trans issues? Does it get into that?
So yeah, obviously in today's climate, trans people are much more visible. There's a lot more, awareness of them. Not saying there's more. They were there back then. They're here now. And when I first heard that they were going to cover trans characters, like, ooh, like that could get really messy or like really,
I didn't
really
know
hard.
I didn't know how they're going to do it. And maybe that's just my very, binary mindset where I'm like, but wouldn't they be dead? But I'm, thinking from a male point of view where it's like,
Right,
oh, yeah, there's that other...
penis.
Yeah, that dumb dick.
It's obvious in the show when that comes up because you see men, trans men, and you're like, wait, what? Did we go back?
There was a moment where I was like, is this a flashback? What the fuck is this?
And then I remembered that they were going to cover, trans issues, and like, oh, okay, I'm really curious to see how they handle this, and I thought they did it very delicately, and they basically just said, you know what? They don't have the Y chromosome. They were spared. That's whatever happened, targeted. And I thought it was nice in the background of one of the shots, there's a picture of a trans woman, and they have a little vigil towards her because she had a Y chromosome, so she died when all the other males died.
But yeah, even the remaining trans people are fighting over, testosterone. Because that's, a commodity now. They took all the testosterone when they left. It's like, shit, yeah, I guess that would be a problem. And that's something that
left.
That's something in the comic that wasn't even on the radar at that point in 2003. That wasn't a conversation that was on the table.
Which makes me really glad that all those other things fell through because they wouldn't have covered that if it wasn't made in today's climate.
At one point, it was going to be one movie, and that was a breaking point between New Line Cinema. It's like, well, we need to do one movie. And it's like, the director, even back then, was like, there's no way.
So one interesting thing I thought about the comic is the aversion to homosexuality, I guess, at the time this was written, where it's only women alive, but yet there's a large number of characters that they meet that are like, well, all the men may be dead, but you couldn't pay me to
Yeah.
And it was just one of these weird things where it's like, really? All the other people are dead, and you're not just gonna go along? You're not gonna find love somewhere?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's that far-fetched,
There's people like that.
I know there's people like that.
I mean, there's a few
Half
moments...
of the country voted like that.
Okay, hold on. Before you gas on that engine, but, there's still, I feel like the entire elimination of a Y chromosome still wouldn't change a sexual attraction of a majority of a gender.
You're telling me.
Yes, I am telling you that.
Hold on.
Okay, let me have you finish your sentence here,
You're
because I
telling
might
me
be on board.
If every woman in the world died, and all you had was cock,
Yeah?
you
And
wouldn't...
butthole.
And a hole.
Okay.
You wouldn't eventually strike up some sort of relationship with another cock and a
I
hole.
feel like... Alright, let me put it this way. I feel like the word eventually is very important here.
Give him a week. And he's
Okay. Desperation at one point, I think, would kick in. Right?
Uh-huh.
But I feel like the initial aversion to it is not out of the question.
Open your mind, Troy.
I almost think that, if something like a cataclysm were to happen like that attitude might grow really strong, right off the gate. And then you'd be like, well, That's all I got.
Well, I also feel like right off the bat, you've got more pressing issues than
Yeah,
like, I need to bang.
Yeah.
Than other things. But
Do
I
you,
feel
though?
like at one point, like a companionship of some kind would be important.
Yeah.
And, like an emotional companionship. And I don't feel like if you got no other choice, it has to be with your same gender because you're double X, right? You're double X chromosome. You have to be, or else you're dead. You're not an XY. Regardless of how you want to show yourself, like, wow, this is going to get more complicated. I don't know if I can traverse this because I am a cis white male. But I feel like I have a decent grasp on it, and eventually you would settle into the universe that now is to you, and you want to have some sort of companionship, and you're just going to have to roll with the punches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say first make sure you get crops like figured out so you can all eat.
Also crops. Yes. Do you know that in Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio's name is Dom Cobb? Anyway, that's it.
But right now in the show, they're talking like they're not gonna have enough food, they're not gonna have enough water, and my first thought was like, grow some fucking crops, like plant a seed.
What also is like a little, like this is like getting into the weeds, but like everything with a Y chromosome is dead. So like you also have animals that aren't reproducing at all. So like at what point there's like your meat supply is now gone.
Yeah. That is something that was not really addressed in the comic at all, and it was very notable in the show because the first signs are all in animals. Like rats and deer and dogs are all dropping dead before the humans do.
Yeah.
And I never even thought of that until you just mentioned it, but like, holy shit, every animal is dead too.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big deal.
Half
Big
animals.
deal.
Well, enough that like in a year you're done.
There are a couple of instances in the comic book where it's like Dr. Mann chimes up like, well, there's all the shrews. They're all dead. They all had a lifespan of this long.
Yeah.
They hadn't had time to reproduce. They're extinct.
Goodbye,
They're
shrews.
done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good riddance, shrews.
What's the shrew ever done?
Feed an owl.
Oh, fuck the owls.
This is gonna be a domino effect.
And
Exactly.
who eats owls?
Humans. Look at all them chickens.
How many owls you eating today?
Do you eat an owl like an owl will eat something else? Don't you?
I open them up like
pellets.
I open them up like an egg carton. There's just 12 owls in it. Crack open an owl and just suck it out. Is this gonna be in the show?
Yeah.
Sucking owls.
Like a cracking owl.
How else do you know?
Like an owl would eat an owl. You eat a whole owl and then you shit out an owl pellet. An owl pellet. I guess they cough them up, but whatever.
Well, you can't even twist off an owl head. They go all the way around. You gotta crack them open.
Twisting it for days.
You can't screw it off like a lid.
You gotta crack them over in the middle.
Do you do it like split or do you do it from
Just like
back?
an egg.
You hit it on the countertop a couple of times.
Yeah.
If you don't want those owl whites in there, though, you can separate them.
This is single-handedly the dumbest thing we've ever talked about.
Third dumbest.
What if like every episode?
No. I wish.
Oh.
I can just say to Troy, what the fuck, Richard?
Yeah. What the fuck, Richard?
Oh. So as you said, the show gives a spotlight to all these characters that we didn't get as much on in the comic. There's a ton on Yorick's mom, who's now the president. which is something that you would think would be worth watching.
Yeah.
And there's all these other, like, kind of secondary characters where it's like, yeah, this plague was fucking awful. Like, the interpretation of this in the show feels so much more horrific than it did in the comic, where you're like, oh my god, there's just decrepit skeletons and
There's a lot of-
rotting bodies all over the street. Yeah, every one of these women deserves to have their story shown just as much as Yorick. Yorick seems like secondary to these, where he's just like this guy kind of bumbling around and like cracking jokes here and there, and you're like, let's get away from Yorick. Let's get to the important stuff.
Yeah. Which they're doing I feel like they're doing a good balance of.
They are. I would say it's like 30% Yorick, like 60% these other women in the story, where I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, this is actually a lot more interesting.
What about the other 10%?
That's not math. It is one of those things where it's like, this was a comic that was spearheaded and written from a male perspective, which is great. That's comics. Everything is from a male perspective for the most part.
Right.
At least 20 years ago. And that's what the story was. And it's an awesome pitch and it's a great jumping on point. But I think we've all come farther than that we can take that idea and really like dissect it and involve more people and just be like, yeah, there's a lot more to discuss on this. And there's so much more to expand on. Bring in more people, get more voices in there, because this is a very wide-scale story. Like, why just focus it on one guy?
Yeah.
And I get it. It's why The Last Man. It's Yorick, the last man.
Yeah.
It's from the perspective of a male writer, but it sells the story short if you only tell it from that perspective.
Oh, yeah, of course. But I feel, though, like, BKV is, like, almost the perfect writer for this. Because he is very forward-thinking. He is very feminist. Like, he is the one person who could write the story and did.
Yes.
You know, like...
Yep.
So,
and he's also the one that's like, take it and run with it. Like, make it better.
Yes.
And I think that's what it is. Like, I hate to say it, I love Why the Last Man. My firstborn, his middle name is Yorick. And it's not from Shakespeare. It's from Why the Last Man. But I'm like, as soon as I saw pieces of this, I'm like, this is going to be better than the source material. Because we're living in an age where, like, it can be better.
My lord.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm going to carve out some time to watch some Why the Last Man, I think.
You probably should.
I preferred you would have done it before we recorded this.
So, I mean, we've praised this book up and down. Like, not only is it good for us, but, like, it won a slew of awards. It won 5 Eisners. It was nominated for a Hugo Award for Best Graphic Story. It's the first one that ever was nominated for that award. It didn't win. I don't know what won above it. I didn't look that up, but, like...
Something stupid, probably.
Probably something fucking stupid that we don't even know about. We didn't even bring it up. But, like, it is leaps and bounds, like, one of the best stories out there. And the fact that it debuted in comic form, and it appeals to so many... If you haven't read it, like, how have you not heard of it by now? But please read it. Like, it is so good. But you've had a BKV story.
We'll get to it when we review Saga.
Sounds appropriate. So that's our broad strokes on Why the Last Man. We covered
60 issues.
60 issues, and we went over it very quickly. There's a lot of nuance in there that we couldn't cover, but, like, in the book on your read, you will realize, like, how great it is. We would also like to give a big shout out to our patrons out there who have joined our Patreon. If you'd like to join our Patreon, with that you get access to our Discord, which is up 24/7. You get also access to other perks. But that's going to be the show. So thanks for joining us on this probably oversized issue of Imperius Rex.
Editing this, if I can be honest.
And this is just a first step on our BKV our Vaughn-a-thon.
Oh my
if
god.
I could.
Long
say
time
so.
coming.
Yeah.
Long time coming. We've got more things to come from BKV, so please stay tuned. But until then, I have been Short of the Max Extreme.
I've been Dinosaur Neil.
I've been the Imperius Rex business manager.
And I've been Ghost Hunter Dave.
And together we've been Imperius Rex, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.